The maid offered leftover bread. The millionaire unmasked a supervisor exploiting her for months. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Emma Walker stands in the dim glow of the service hallway behind the Carter estate's kitchen, her shoulders drawn tight from another 14-hour shift. The stainless steel counters still gleam with traces of a banquet she will never taste, but in her hand she cradles a small paper parcel. Leftover bread she saved from being thrown away. She should be clocking out, should be heading to the bus stop 2 blocks down, but instead she pushes open the back door into the cool night air. A soft breeze lifts a strand of hair from her cheek as she steps out to where the shadows gather behind the estate. That is where she first noticed him, a quiet man sitting on the low stone wall, elbows on his knees, gaze lowered as if he was trying to disappear into the dark. She had seen him twice before, always at this hour, always alone. Tonight, his shoulders look tighter, his breath uneven, and something in her chest tugs. Emma hesitates only a moment before walking over. "Hey, are you hungry?" she asks gently, offering the small bundle in her hands. He lifts his head, and under the soft porch light she sees a face she can't quite read, tired, reserved, and strangely unguarded. His voice is calm, deep, almost careful. "You don't have to give me that." Emma smiles, small but sincere. "It's just bread, and it would have been tossed anyway. Please." He accepts it slowly, as if taking something fragile. "Thank you," he murmurs, and though the words are simple, the way he says them makes them feel heavier. She doesn't know his name. She doesn't know he has one of the most recognizable names in the country. She doesn't know the man sitting in the dark is David Carter, the billionaire who owns the very estate she spends her nights cleaning. She only knows he looked like someone who needed kindness, and kindness is all she has left to offer. For a moment, the world feels still. The night air settles around them, warm enough to soften the edges of the long day. Emma nods and steps back. "Take care, okay?" she whispers. David watches her walk inside again, the small paper parcel resting in his hands, the warmth of her gesture lingering longer than the bread ever could. What he does not say, what he cannot say yet, is that he knows exactly who she is. And he also knows someone has been hurting her for months. Tonight, for the first time, he begins to wonder how much she has endured in silence, and how much longer he can stay silent himself. The next few days unfold in a blur for Emma Walker. She barely notices the hustle and bustle around the Grand Carter estate as she goes about her tasks, her thoughts lingering on the strange encounter with the man in the dark. She wonders about him occasionally, who he was, why he was sitting there all alone in the cold night, but she quickly brushes the thoughts away. She has enough on her plate already. The next shift comes too soon, and Emma finds herself standing in the kitchen again, scrubbing dishes that never seem to end. Her eyes are heavy from lack of sleep, her back sore from hours spent bending over sinks and counters. The weight of her responsibilities is pressing in on her, the bills, the rent, and the nagging fear that her life will never change. She tries not to think about it, but sometimes it's hard to shake the feeling that she's stuck in a never-ending cycle, one that no amount of scrubbing or extra shifts can fix. On this particular evening, she's cleaning up after a lavish dinner party held at the estate, and the guests have long since left. The mansion feels empty now, its grand hallways echoing with silence. She's just about finished when she hears footsteps behind her. Turning, she's surprised to see David Carter standing in the doorway of the kitchen. He's no longer the stranger she helped that night, but the towering figure she's always known him to be. His tailored suit fits him perfectly, and the expensive watch on his wrist gleams under the kitchen lights. But his expression is different. There's something soft in his eyes, something Emma has never seen in the powerful man who owns everything around her. "Emma," he says quietly, his voice steady, but there's an underlying sincerity to it that catches her off guard. "Can we talk?" Her heart races. She doesn't know what to expect, but she knows it's not a conversation she's prepared for. She wipes her hands on her apron and nods. "Sure, Mr. Carter." He gestures for her to follow him, and they walk in silence through the corridors of the mansion, past the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Emma feels small in comparison to the grandeur of it all, but she forces herself to stay composed. She follows him into a quiet sitting room at the far end of the house. The walls are lined with bookshelves filled with leather-bound books, and a fire crackles softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the room. David sits down in one of the plush armchairs, and Emma hesitates for a moment before sitting across from him. There's a heavy silence between them, and Emma can feel her pulse quicken. Finally, David speaks again. "I've been meaning to ask you something, Emma," he begins, his tone serious but not unkind. "The other night, when you gave me that bread, He pauses, searching for the right words. "I don't know why, but it made me realize something. I've seen so many people take from others, use them, without a second thought. But you gave me something without hesitation, and I can't stop thinking about it." Emma looks at him, surprised. She hadn't expected him to bring up that moment at all, let alone like this. "It was just bread," she says quietly. "No big deal." David shakes his head, his gaze never leaving hers. "It's not just about the bread, Emma. It's about you. I've been watching the way people treat you, the way your supervisor treats you." Emma feels her stomach twist. She's not sure where this is going, but she knows it's not good. I don't understand what you mean," she says softly. "Your supervisor," David continues, his voice low, "has been taking advantage of you for months. I've seen it, Emma. The way they treat you, the way they make you work without any respect for you as a person." Emma's eyes widen, her breath catching in her throat. What do you mean?" "I mean," David says, his voice firm, "that I'm not going to let it happen anymore." Emma blinks, stunned. "What are you saying?" David leans forward, his expression resolute. "I'm going to make sure that person is held accountable for their actions, and I'm going to make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve. No one should have to work like this. No one should have to feel small." His words hit her like a wave, crashing over her in a way she never expected. She feels a flicker of hope, something she hasn't felt in a long time. For the first time, someone is seeing her, not just as a maid, not just as a worker, but as a person. "Thank you," she whispers, her voice shaky with emotion. David nods, his gaze softening. "You don't have to thank me, Emma. But I want you to know this. I won't stand by and watch people like you be treated like this anymore." The weight of his words settles in her chest, and she feels something shift inside her. For the first time in a long time, she allows herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. The following week, Emma finds herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The words David spoke that night replay in her mind every time she steps into the estate's kitchen, every time she clocks in for another shift. She's not used to this kind of attention, this kind of care. It feels foreign, like something she's only seen in movies. But here, in the quiet corners of the Carter estate, it's becoming her reality. She doesn't know how to process it. She feels like she's on the edge of something big, something life-changing, but she's afraid to take the step forward. The days pass in a blur. She wakes up early, takes the bus to work, and then repeats the same motions she's done for years, scrubbing, cleaning, serving. But something is different now. She's constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never does. David's presence lingers in the back of her mind. His kindness, his offer to help, the way he spoke with such certainty about protecting her, it's all too much to process. But then one morning, as she enters the kitchen to begin her shift, she sees him again. David is standing by the grand windows overlooking the estate, his hands resting on the ledge as he looks out into the distance. She hesitates for a moment before walking over, unsure of what to say or do. But when he turns to her, his smile is warm and genuine, like he's been waiting for her. "Emma," he says, his voice calm, but with an underlying warmth. "I wanted to follow up on what we talked about the other night." She stops in her tracks, her heart racing in her chest. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replies. "I just want to make sure you're okay. You don't deserve to be treated the way your supervisor has been treating you. I've made sure they understand that." Emma blinks, her breath catching in her throat. What do you mean?" "I've spoken to the management," he says, his tone serious. "I've made it clear that I won't tolerate anyone treating my staff unfairly. Your supervisor is no longer in a position to harm you." Emma stands frozen for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She never expected this. Never thought that someone like David would go out of his way to make sure she was safe, to make sure she was treated with respect. But now, standing before her, is the proof. I don't know what to say, she whispers, her voice trembling slightly. You don't have to say anything, Emma. Just know that you're not alone in this. I've got your back. His words are simple, but they carry so much weight. Emma feels tears welling up in her eyes. She can't believe this is happening. She's been so used to fighting her own battles, to feeling like no one cared, but now she's starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. She takes a deep breath, steadying herself. Thank you, she says quietly. David nods, his expression softening. You don't need to thank me. You've done nothing wrong. I just want you to feel safe here. She nods, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years, she feels like someone sees her, really sees her. Not just as a maid, not just as someone to be used, but as a person worthy of respect, of kindness, of care. And for the first time in a long time, she lets herself believe it. She lets herself hope. As she turns to leave the kitchen, she feels lighter than she has in a long time. The weight of the world doesn't feel so heavy anymore. And for the first time in what feels like forever, Emma Walker allows herself to dream of a future where she doesn't have to struggle alone. A future where she's not just surviving, but living. The days that followed were nothing short of surreal for Emma. Every morning, as she walked to the estate for her shift, her mind replayed the conversation with David. She couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief, the way his words had changed something deep within her. But with each passing day, it became harder to deny that something was shifting. Emma still walked through the estate with the same determination, but there was a subtle difference now. Her steps were lighter, her posture straighter. She began to hold her head up higher. No longer did she feel like an invisible part of the background, like just another servant. She felt seen, heard, and for the first time, respected. David had kept his word. Her supervisor, the one who had made her life a constant struggle, was no longer around. The staff now treated her with the kind of respect she hadn't known was possible in a place like this. She didn't have to hide her exhaustion or pretend that she was okay anymore. Emma had been given a second chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. But despite all of this, there was still a nagging feeling in the back of her mind, a question she couldn't shake. Why? Why had David done this for her? Why had he seen something in her that she hadn't even seen in herself? She still didn't know the full extent of his life, his world, but she was beginning to realize that David was not just a businessman. He was something more, a man who valued kindness, who cared about doing what was right. She would never have guessed that a man like him could exist in a world so focused on power and wealth. One evening, after finishing her shift, Emma was surprised to find David waiting for her by the back door of the kitchen. He looked up when she walked out, his expression softening when their eyes met. "Hey, Emma," he greeted her. She stopped in her tracks, unsure of what to expect. "Hi, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice still uncertain. It was still so strange to hear him address her so casually, as if they were equals. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," David said, his voice low but kind. "I wanted to ask if you'd join me for a cup of coffee. I've been meaning to talk to you." Emma hesitated for a moment. She was used to keeping her distance from her employers, used to hiding behind her work and staying out of sight. But there was something about David's presence, something about the way he had treated her from the beginning, that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't so strange after all. "Sure," she said, her voice tentative but hopeful. They walked together to the small cafe on the estate grounds, a quiet place where employees often went to unwind after a long day. David led her to a corner booth, and they sat across from each other. The soft hum of conversation and clinking of cups filled the background. But for Emma, it felt like the world had quieted down. She wasn't used to this, wasn't used to sharing a space like this with someone like David. "I just wanted to say," David began, his gaze fixed on his coffee cup, "that I'm proud of you, Emma. I can see the way you've been handling yourself. You've been working hard, and it hasn't gone unnoticed." Emma felt a rush of warmth at his words. She had always worked hard, but no one had ever taken the time to acknowledge it before. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a lump form in her throat. "You're welcome," David replied, meeting her gaze. "You deserve better than what you've been given, and I want you to know that you have a future here if you want it." The weight of his words settled in Emma's chest. She wasn't sure what to say, how to respond to an offer like that. The idea of having a future where she wasn't struggling every day just to get by, was something she had never even dared to dream of. You don't have to make any decisions right away, David continued. But I wanted to put it out there. You don't have to stay in a job that drains you. You're better than that. Emma swallowed hard. It felt like a door had opened in her life, and she didn't know whether she was ready to walk through it yet. But she knew one thing. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was allowed to dream. She felt like there was more waiting for her. I'll think about it, Emma said softly, her voice trembling. David smiled, his eyes warm. Take your time. I'm here if you need anything. The conversation shifted after that, moving to lighter topics as they sipped their coffee, but Emma's mind kept drifting back to his offer. She had spent so many years fighting just to survive, to keep her head above water. But now, for the first time, someone was offering her a chance to truly live, to have a future that didn't feel so hopeless. That night, as she made her way back to her small apartment, she felt a quiet sense of hope building inside her. Maybe things were finally changing. Maybe she was finally changing. Emma spent the next few days in a daze, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. Every time she stepped into the estate, a new feeling filled her, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The kind of hope that grew quietly in the back of your mind when you allowed yourself to believe in a future beyond survival. She couldn't stop thinking about David's offer, about the idea that she might not have to live this way forever. The chance to build a different life seemed so far away, yet so close, just within reach. That evening, after finishing another long shift, Emma was walking through the garden toward the staff exit when she saw him again. David was standing near the fountain, looking up at the stars, his hands tucked into his pockets. For a moment, she hesitated. He had been kind to her, yes, but there was still a part of her that wasn't sure how to handle this new reality. She had spent so many years fighting to survive that now, when given the chance to truly live, she wasn't sure what to do with it. But as she drew closer, David turned, his gaze softening when he saw her. Emma, he said, his voice calm but filled with warmth. I didn't expect to see you here. She smiled nervously, still unsure of how to behave in moments like this. I was just finishing up. Headed home, actually. David nodded, his smile never wavering. I'm glad we caught each other. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other night. Emma's heart skipped a beat. And what have you decided? She asked, her voice quieter than she intended. David looked at her, his eyes full of something she couldn't quite place. I've decided that I want to give you the opportunity to take a real step forward. To stop being treated like you don't matter. Emma's breath caught in her chest. She hadn't expected him to say something like that. She had expected him to back off, to let things go back to the way they were. But instead, here he was, offering her a chance at something different. I've already spoken to the board, David continued, his voice steady. They're going to offer you a position, one that gives you a chance to truly grow, to build something for yourself. No more cleaning, no more being treated like you're invisible. Emma blinked, unable to comprehend the full weight of his words. This wasn't just an offer, it was a lifeline. You're serious? She whispered. I'm serious, David said, nodding. I want to help you find your own way, Emma. You've earned it. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was standing on solid ground. The uncertainty, the fear, that had always held her back from dreaming, suddenly, it seemed like it wasn't as big as it had once felt. I don't know what to say, she managed, her voice shaking slightly. You don't have to say anything right now, David said. Take your time. I just want you to know that the opportunity is there. You deserve it, and I believe you'll do amazing things with it. Emma stood there for a moment, taking in his words, letting them sink deep into her soul. She had always lived in the shadows, doing her best to survive, never allowing herself to think of what could be. But now, for the first time in her life, someone had given her the permission to dream. Someone had shown her that maybe, just maybe, she was worth more than the life she had been living. As she turned to leave, David called out to her, his voice warm but serious. Emma, just remember, you don't have to do this alone anymore. Those words lingered in her heart long after she walked out of the estate. As she made her way home, her steps felt lighter, as if the weight of years of struggle had finally started to lift. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to live. The days that followed were filled with a sense of unease mixed with hope. Emma couldn't help but replay David's words over and over in her mind. The offer he had made seemed almost too good to be true. She had spent her entire life struggling just to keep afloat, and now someone was offering her a chance to stand tall, to build something for herself. But as much as she wanted to believe in it, she couldn't shake the doubt that lingered in the back of her mind. She had been let down too many times before. But despite the doubts, something inside her was changing. It was hard to ignore the new sense of possibility that had begun to bloom in her heart. For the first time in a long time, she was starting to think that maybe she deserved more. Maybe she didn't have to live in the shadows forever. Her first few days in the new role were a whirlwind. The transition from maid to someone with a more professional title felt strange, and Emma often caught herself looking around the office in disbelief. The polished furniture, the sleek computers, the people who were so different from anyone she had ever interacted with, it was all so foreign to her. But David had made sure that she had a place here. He had personally seen to it that she was welcomed, that she was given a fair chance to prove herself. And Emma was determined not to waste it. She started small, taking on administrative tasks, helping with scheduling, answering phone calls. The work was different from what she had been used to, but there was something satisfying about it. She was no longer invisible, no longer just the person who cleaned up after others. Slowly, the people around her began to treat her differently. They didn't look at her with the same pitying eyes they had when she was a maid. Instead, they saw her as someone who was just as capable as anyone else. Emma found herself growing more confident with each passing day. She didn't feel like she had to hide anymore, like she had to shrink into the background to avoid being noticed. She was part of the team now, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. One evening, after another long day at the office, Emma was gathering her things when David approached her. "How's it going?" he asked with a smile. She smiled back, though it was a little tired. "It's going well. A little overwhelming, but I'm getting the hang of it." "I knew you would," he said, his voice warm and encouraging. "You're doing great, Emma. I'm really proud of you." The words hit her harder than she expected. She wasn't used to hearing that kind of praise, especially not from someone like David. He wasn't just any boss. He was the kind of man who could have anyone at his feet, who could make anyone feel small. But he didn't. He made her feel like she mattered. "Thank you," Emma said softly, looking down at the desk for a moment to gather her thoughts. "That means a lot." "You deserve it," David replied. He hesitated for a moment before continuing, his tone shifting slightly. "I know it's a big change, but you've got what it takes. Don't let anyone, or anything, make you forget that." Emma nodded, the weight of his words settling over her. It wasn't just the job, the new title, it was the belief he had in her. She wasn't just a worker anymore. She was someone who had the potential to go further than she ever imagined. That night, as Emma walked home, she felt something inside her shift. The world felt different, lighter somehow. For the first time, she could see a future that didn't involve endless struggle. She could see a future where she could stand tall, where she could be more than just a survivor. She could be someone who thrived. And she owed it all to the man who had given her a chance to change her life, David Carter. Weeks passed, and Emma found herself growing into the role David had offered her. She wasn't just doing a job anymore. She was building a future. Every morning as she entered the office, the familiar sense of dread that had once followed her everywhere seemed to fade a little more. Instead, she felt anticipation. There was something about the work now, something that made her feel like she was truly contributing, like she was making a difference. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when the weight of her past would creep back in, when self-doubt would gnaw at her. But each day, she fought through it. David had given her a chance, and she wasn't about to waste it. One afternoon, as Emma sat at her desk working through a stack of paperwork, she was interrupted by a soft knock at her office door. Looking up, she saw David standing in the doorway, his usual confident expression softened by a hint of something unspoken. "Got a minute?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an edge of seriousness she wasn't used to hearing. "Of course," Emma replied, standing up and straightening her blouse. She wasn't sure what this was about, but she could tell it was important. David stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He stood there for a moment, his hands clasped in front of him, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity she hadn't expected. "I've been watching you, Emma," he began, his tone steady but filled with a warmth that made her heart race. And I want to say, you've exceeded every expectation I had. You're more than capable. I knew it the first time we spoke, but seeing you work every day, it's clear to me you've got a lot more potential than you realize. Emma blinked, her breath catching in her chest. She wasn't used to hearing such praise, especially not from someone like David. Thank you, she whispered, feeling a surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. David smiled slightly, but there was a seriousness behind his eyes. I'm glad you're here, Emma, but I need you to understand something. The role I offered you, it's not just a job. It's a chance for you to prove that you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I want to give you more responsibility. Emma's heart skipped a beat. More responsibility, she echoed, her voice a little shakier than she intended. Yes, David confirmed, stepping closer to her. Desk, I want you to take on a leadership role, not as a maid, not as someone doing menial tasks, but as someone who helps shape the direction of this place. I believe in you, Emma, and I think you're ready for this. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the edge of her desk, her mind reeling. She had never imagined this for herself. She had always been content to stay in the background, never daring to ask for more. But now, here was David, offering her everything she had never dared to dream of. I don't know what to say, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Say yes, David said with a quiet smile. Say yes, and we'll take this journey together. For a moment, Emma felt like she was floating. This was it. The moment when everything she had ever wanted was within her reach. She could feel the weight of the decision ahead of her, but for the first time, she didn't feel scared. Yes, she said, her voice firm with newfound conviction. I'll do it. I'll take the responsibility. David nodded, his expression warm. Good. I knew you would. He paused for a moment, his gaze softening. I'm proud of you, Emma, and I'm glad you're part of this team. As David left her office, Emma sat back in her chair, her heart racing. She had done it. She had taken the first step toward a life she had once thought impossible. And now, nothing could stop her. The future was hers to create, and she was ready to make it happen. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change for Emma. She had never imagined herself in the position she was in now. A leader, someone people relied on. It felt surreal, like a dream she had never dared to dream, but now it was her reality. Every morning, she walked into the office with a sense of purpose, her head held a little higher, her steps a little more confident. She was no longer just a maid, no longer just a person who did the work no one else wanted to do. She had earned her place here, and it felt right. David had kept his word. He had given her a chance, and she had taken it, proving herself more capable with each passing day. And with each new responsibility, Emma began to see a version of herself she had never known existed. A version that wasn't just surviving, but thriving. One afternoon, as Emma sat at her desk, reviewing some documents, she was interrupted by a soft knock at her door. Looking up, she saw David standing in the doorway, his usual confident demeanor softened by a smile. Got a minute? He asked, his voice casual, but with an underlying sense of seriousness. Emma nodded, setting the papers aside. Of course, come in. David stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He looked at her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. I just wanted to check in, he said, his voice steady. How are you feeling about everything? The new responsibilities, the changes. How's it all going for you? Emma hesitated for a moment, the weight of his question hanging in the air. She had never been good at talking about her feelings, especially not with someone like David. But there was something in his eyes that made her feel like it was okay to be honest. It's been a lot, she said, her voice soft but sincere. It's overwhelming at times, but it feels good, too. I never thought I could do something like this. I never thought I'd be trusted with so much. David smiled, and for a brief moment, she saw the pride in his eyes. I knew you could do it, he said. You've proven yourself more than capable, Emma. I'm proud of you. I've been watching you grow, and it's been incredible to see how far you've come. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to hearing praise, especially not from someone like David. But in that moment, it felt genuine, like he truly saw her for who she was, someone with potential, someone worthy of more than just being seen as an employee. Thank you, she whispered, her voice shaky with emotion. David's smile softened. You don't have to thank me, he said gently. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And I always will be. You've got what it takes, Emma. Don't ever forget that." The words hung in the air, and for the first time in a long time, Emma truly believed them. She wasn't just some girl who had been stuck in a dead-end job, scraping by. She was capable, she was strong, and she was deserving of more. As David left the room, Emma sat back in her chair, her heart full. She had come so far in such a short time, and she knew this was just the beginning. The future stretched out before her, bright and full of possibilities, and for the first time, she felt ready to take it on. With David's support, with the belief he had shown in her, she knew that nothing was impossible. She was ready to step into the life she had always dreamed of, the life she had earned. And she was going to make the most of it. As Emma sat in her small apartment later that evening, the weight of the day's events settled around her. She had never expected her life to change like this. Everything felt different now. Her work, her confidence, her sense of self. She had gone from cleaning the floors of the Carter estate to managing tasks that helped shape the future of the company. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal too. She had discovered parts of herself she never knew existed. David's faith in her had opened a door to a life she had once only dared to imagine. But even now, in the quiet of her apartment, she couldn't fully shake the doubts that crept into her mind. She still felt like a girl who had come from nothing, unsure if she truly deserved the life she was starting to build. But deep down, she knew one thing. She was ready. The next day, as Emma arrived at the office, something felt different in the air. She couldn't pinpoint it, but there was a buzz, a sense of anticipation. As she walked to her desk, her colleague, Sarah, smiled and waved her over. "Emma, you won't believe it," Sarah said with a grin. "They're announcing the new leadership team this afternoon." Emma's heart skipped a beat. The new leadership team? Was it possible she was part of that? Sarah leaned in, lowering her voice. "Word is, they're promoting you. You've been doing such an amazing job, and it's about time they recognized it." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected anything like that. A promotion? She had been so focused on proving herself that she hadn't considered the possibility of something more. But now, the realization hit her. She wasn't just making it through the day anymore. She was moving forward. She was becoming someone important. The announcement came just after lunch. David stepped into the conference room, and all eyes turned toward him. Emma felt her pulse quicken as he made his way to the front. She had worked alongside him for months, but in moments like this, it still felt like he was a world apart. He was the one who made the decisions, the one who shaped the direction of everything around her. "Thank you all for being here," David began, his voice calm but commanding. "Today, we are announcing some exciting changes. Emma Walker has been an invaluable part of our team, and I am pleased to share that she will be taking on a leadership role from this point forward." Emma's breath caught in her chest. She could feel all eyes on her, and for a moment, everything went quiet. But then, the applause started. It was slow at first, but soon, the entire room was clapping, and Emma couldn't help but smile. David's gaze met hers, and she saw the pride in his eyes. It was real. She had made it. "Emma has proven herself time and time again," David continued. "Her hard work, her dedication, and her ability to lead have been nothing short of exceptional. I look forward to seeing all that she will accomplish in this new role." The room erupted in applause again, and Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She couldn't believe this was happening. She was no longer just the girl who cleaned the floors. She was part of something bigger now. She was a leader. As she walked back to her desk later that day, her mind was spinning. She had been given a chance to prove her worth, a chance to show that she was more than her circumstances. And she had taken it. The road ahead would still have challenges, but Emma knew one thing for sure. She was ready for them. She had come so far, and now, there was no turning back. With a smile on her face and a heart full of determination, Emma sat down at her desk, ready to face the future. This was just the beginning.